All right, ADHD, to medicate or not to medicate? That is a big question. You have a huge dilemma on your hands when you have this diagnosis. And so I'm here to help you break this down a little bit more so you can make an informed decision. I'm Dr. Jan Bedell. I'm a neurodevelopmentalist and have been for about 30 years. Now, I have to tell you that I am not an MD. So please do not take any of this that I say as medical advice, as I'm just going to give you my experience. But it is a pretty much of a challenge when parents are trying to get information. It's a little easier now because there's more groups that you can get advice from your peers, but for the longest time, they have been hiding things from you that might be different from medicating. So just up front, I'm going to encourage you to seek other options than medication, and um, I'll be able to tell you many of the reasons why that is. But I want to give you a little bit of experience, of my experience and try and get the word out about alternative things to medication. Years ago, I went to Oklahoma to do evaluations of children there in that area, and there was a really big support group for ADHD there for children and adults with ADHD, and they invited me to come speak to their group. Well, I was doing a seminar there a month or so before my invitation to speak to their group, and what happened was the vice president and the president came to that meeting, and they found out I was gonna say something besides, medication and coping and compensating, and they promptly uninvited me to speak. So that's why I say it's kind of challenging sometimes to be able to get information to you out there that need this information because it seems to be more and more prevalent all the time. More and more children are being diagnosed or are showing the symptoms of ADHD. Now, I do call this a symptomatic label. And the reason that I say it's a symptomatic label is because it's a list of symptoms. You know, if they do this, or don't do that, or do something else, and there's enough check marks on that page, then they give them that label. So it's that's why I call it a symptomatic label. Now, there's 3 different presentations that you may be familiar with. They say that this, disorder, uh, comes in the form of 3 different, things. Sometimes it's inattentive, sometimes it's hyperactive, ADHD, or it's a combination of both. So they could get any of those labels put on that ADHD. Now, um, I'm going to, because there's so many symptoms, I'm mainly leaving this time for question and answers on Wednesdays at 1 o'clock. So if you want to join me and ask questions, just put them in the chat and I'd be glad to discuss those with you. So I'm going to put those in a longer version that I'm going to post later about the different symptoms and some of the root causes. And then over the next few weeks, what we're going to do is just dial into each one of those symptoms and find out what some of the root causes are and what you do about it. Now, what's happening right now is this label and these symptoms are wreaking havoc in homes all across the country. It's causing conflict because kids aren't following directions. And you think it's a behavioral thing, and it may not be. It may be that they're just not holding all that information together. It can cause all kinds of disappointment because if your child's in school and you know they're smart and you know even that they did their homework because you observed that, but they didn't turn it in, and so their grades are that can cause all kinds of negative things in the home. And then frustration, it can be very frustrating when the child doesn't follow through. And if you're homeschooling, this is like not finishing an assignment, turning the page when the page is half finished and calling it done, and just getting distracted all the time by their own thoughts or other things that are happening around them. Again, in that longer version, I'm going to outline those symptoms, the root cause, and that kind of thing. But today I wanted to leave you with some real hope for the future for your child if they have these kinds of symptoms. The brain has an amazing ability to change and grow if we give it specific information and and we are able to build those new pathways in the brain. So there's a huge amount of hope. I did want to tell you a story about Aaron. Aaron came to me when he was about 14, and he had been on Ritalin for 5 years. Now, he could not function in the classroom or even in life without taking the Ritalin. But the mom was very concerned about it, especially when he hit puberty. He was having some hallucinations and things like that. So she definitely wanted him off of that medication, but he just couldn't seem to function without it. When we started neurodevelopmental activities, we started, like I was saying, stimulating the brain to build those new pathways so there's better function. When we did that, over about 9 months, he was able to get completely off of his medication and has never needed it since. And just to give you some real hope, he's a father now, father of four. He's a part owner in a business, very successful. And, I know those fears sometimes creep in, like what is their future going to be like because they can't even, sit still and pay attention for 5 minutes. But something really can be done differently. And that's the important thing. So when your question is to medicate or not to medicate, my recommendation is let's really delve into these root causes. Let's find out what we can do to stimulate the brain to diminish or eliminate. We've even had many of those symptoms eliminated completely because of stimulating the brain. And they call this particular label in the new definition that they give it. They say ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. So, what better way to treat a neurodevelopmental disorder than through neurodevelopmental activities? That's what we do at Brain Sprints. So, I want you to check that out because, neuro has to do with the brain, having to do with the brain, just breaking that word down, neurodevelopment. Neuro has to do with the brain, and development is how are the different parts of our brain through God's created order supposed to develop, what's keeping it from happening or disrupting it. Many things in our society, many things in just the way we raise our children are interrupting those things and causing some of these. So if you stimulate the brain, it can come to build those superhighways in the brain instead of those bumpy back roads that are causing all the conflict, disappointment, and frustration that are maybe happening at your home. So keep tuning in. We're going to dig into it. We're going to give you some good information on how to make a difference. And in the meantime, if you want to go to brainsprints.com, you can get a free consultation to see if there's something that you might want to consider doing at home to build those superhighways in the brain. For now, I'm signing off.